I'm very, very happy to be here, of course. The high school is what brought me out to California. Now, 6 years later, I'm still sticking around. Have had a few additions to my family in between, but so the high school is always, it's going to have a place in my heart. I'm very excited and honored to be here speaking to you guys about one of my favorite topics, data visualizations. So right now I'm at Splunk. I'm a product manager, but before that I was actually a partner and technology lead at a local data visualization studio called Halftone. And we did a lot of interactive, sort of highly polished data visualizations. And I'm sort of going to talk very abstractly about time in data viz, but my goal is to illustrate that with examples and projects that we've done in the same vein, so that you see how those things plan out in practice. All right. So when we think about time in data visualizations, the first thing that probably comes to mind if I asked you, what's a visualization that you've seen that shows time or utilizes time, is probably this, right? It hasn't changed much in the last 8 years or so. This is from Google Analytics. I think this is from my personal website, so it's in the low 50s with one spike when someone happened to tweet out a project or something. But the visualization itself is very, very simple, right? You have this x-axis where you show time from start to end between February and April, and you have y-axis where you show a metric and where it spikes. It's sort of easy to pick up outliers like that. That's kind of the state of the art when it comes down to visualizing time, right? Everyone is using line graphs. Turns out this is actually not a new idea. Clearly, this has been around for well over 20 years, right? So this chart has been made by William Playfair. He was an economist in the 18th century, and he's kind of credited with the invention of the line chart and the area graph and a lot of other statistical time series charts. So this stuff has been around for quite a long time. And actually, if you actually look at that, I feel like this is still superior than most time charts you see today, because it actually shows two series and their relationship, and it creates the derived metric. So this is actually a really good chart compared to, again, a lot of the charts that you see out there. So by no means I'm about to bash time series charts and line charts. It's clearly a staple in data visualization and charting. It has its place. But my goal is to show a little bit how time can be used in data visualization, aside from just this, aside from just showing time series. And just so we're all on the same page, this is the definition I found on dozens of websites. I could not find who said that actually first, but it's the verbatim word-by-word same definition. So time series, it's a sequence of data points measured at successive points in time and spaced at very uniform time intervals across an axis. And so if you read this, and if you took this as a design brief for what chart would show best what a time series does, turns out it's the perfect brief for the line chart. So it's sort of this symbiotic relationship. The line chart shows what time series do best, and vice versa. But if we want to show other things, we have to break out of this paradigm a little bit. So I'm going to talk about three different ways, or three different methods to visualize time in a different fashion. First one I'm going to talk about is breaking up the time series into smaller chunks that are more semantically meaningful. So take this example. This is yet another line chart. It shows births in, I think, New York City in the middle of the last century. Not particularly exciting. You can definitely see there's some sort of trend going on. In the 50s, a little bit more births. Other than that, there's some seasonality, but it's really hard to pick out what is specific about this chart. As data scientists, you of course have statistical methods at your disposal, so you can start decomposing your time series into just the trend, your seasonality, and sort of a random component. And that tells you a little bit of something, right? It tells you a little bit of a trend. But the seasonality in itself, apart from the shape of the seasonality, doesn't tell you all that much. So if you wanted to look more closely into what does seasonality mean, you can use visualization to actually explore your data set a little bit closer. So this is an example inspired by sort of one of the people who've worked in data visualization for a long time, Robert Cresara. And it is showing the exact same data. Instead of showing it on a line chart over time, it shows it as two different ways. One as a spiral, where each month is sort of one segment of a circle going from inward, or going from the outside to the middle of the circle, and then the same as a matrix, where it's the first month, second month, third month, and so on until the last month at the very bottom. Looks fairly random, but you can definitely see there's some sort of trend there. And the reason this doesn't look all that exciting is because of the periodicity, the way I break up this chart. It's right now set to a random value, 11, so you see there's going to be 11 columns and 11 wedges of the circle. But once we start playing with that, and this is where exploratory visualizations come in, it starts taking a much different shape, right? So you can start playing with it, periodicity of 11, 10, 9, 8, uh-oh, something's coming closer. Ah, there you go. This looks much, much different, right? And so periodicity of 7, that, of course, when we talk about time, reminds us of something. So this is showing all births over the course of a year broken down by weeks, right? And so you see that if this is Sunday, and we start, I think this starts with Sunday, there are more births during, weekdays, and not so many births on the weekends. And at first I thought that's really surprising, because what does nature care about weekends? But then, of course, having had a baby, with all the medical procedures that go along with that, and C-sections and all that, it starts actually making a lot of sense. What's interesting about this, though, apart from seeing things broken down in a certain periodicity, is that you can now start seeing outliers in the in a general trend of things that you could not pick up in a time series that's super random, right? So you see something like that. It's January 2nd. I think 4th of July. Down there is I think Thanksgiving somewhere, and Christmas. So you see that the schedule and the calendar of births follows very closely our sort of natural calendar that we live throughout the year. And the reason that is, of course, is because we assign so much context to time. We have weekends and weekdays. We have the 4 seasons, and spring and summer. And in summer we're very different than in winter. We have time of day. We sleep at night. We nap around noon, maybe not. So we assign a lot of context to time that's not inherently that's not inherent with time in general. And so, see if I can break out of this. There you go. So you don't have to go all that crazy, right? Showing the data in the circle or in a matrix, that's something that not a lot of tools can do. You'd have to code that up yourself. This is an example of a very traditional chart. It's still a line chart, still shows time series, but what we've done different, and that's an example of work we've done. Maybe I should take a step back and explain what this is. We've done some work for Stanford Research Institute that did a lot of work around groundwater. And in California we have a very severe drought going on, and groundwater is really at risk right now. So we did a lot of data visualizations to explain the topic, to explore what's really going on. This particular chart is just showing precipitation in California over the course of 120 years. And so each of those lines that you see here, the light gray ones and the ones that we've highlighted, is 1 year of precipitation data starting at what they call the water year, which starts apparently in October in California. Starting with almost no precipitation, and in an average year you have roughly 20 inches of precipitation, 22 inches of precipitation in California. And so you take the wettest years from the 80s, it went up to 40. And then we talk about the two most severe droughts in the last 120 years, the Dust Bowl and drought in the 70s. It was really low at about 8 or so. And so the last rain season, when the drought really started being more severe, is almost as bad. And so back to talking about breaking up a time series into different components. That's exactly what we did here, right? So instead of showing precipitation from like the 1890s up until the present in one long time series, we really went ahead and chopped it up into 1 year series. So we show 120 time series here. And to reduce clutter, of course, we muted everything that was not helpful, or that was sort of noise. But we still wanted to give people the opportunity to see what was going on here. So that's a method we use a lot in data visualization, where you highlight, this is talking about communicating data. You highlight what you really want to communicate, but if you can make it interactive, you can open up the data set for exploration in case someone wants to learn more about the data set. So once again, this is breaking up one time series into 120 different ones. Right, so the next project I want to talk about is actually pretty close to heart. So I assume most of you are PG&E customers. Being in California, don't have all that much choice. PG&E gives you these statistics of your energy usage. I just happened to copy some from my own energy bill, and yes, it shows you your energy usage over the course of a year, and if you want to drill down, it shows you 1 day. But that's not really how I think of energy. Clearly there are patterns, but I want to know, when was there particularly a particular day when I used a lot of energy, or was there something interesting in my energy usage that I didn't know? And so it turns out, as part of a sort of national initiative, that a lot of utility providers give you the ability to export your energy data as a standardized XML file. You can download that, so you all could go to PG&E and download your energy data over the course of a year. And so we wrote a tool that helps you visualize your 1 year of energy data as much as we could get from PG&E. And so this leads me into a different topic. I'm going to come back to the PG&E example. So the second method of dealing with time is derive additional dimensions from time, because there's so much context in time. So what do I mean by that? So if you look at it, time is this time series. Right now it's May 8th, 11. Well, I guess we're running a little bit late. 11:15. You could see that as one event, one point in time, or you could say, this is the 6th day of the week. It's the 8th day of the month also, 5th month, and so on and so forth. It's also second quarter, so something completely arbitrary. And 16 minutes of the hour, we could go down to the second level. And all of that, the number is actually not as important as the order of things, right? So the 6th day of the week, what's important is it comes after the 5th and before the 7th. So I'm just going to show that very, very briefly. I'm not going to go into the interactive example. So we took that energy data and did exactly that. So we broke it up into multiple dimensions. So days of your month. This is looking at 1 month. Days of your month, all the hours of your day. And it shows you a pattern of how you use energy, right? But beyond that, if you're a database person, this will sound very, very familiar to you, of course. We can aggregate along all those dimensions. So we can aggregate over all the days of your month, the hours of your day, and we get one big number for the month of November, and likewise for October, September, and so on, can compare that. But we also aggregate for all of the midnight hours of your month and all of the noon hours of your month, so that you can start, seeing data clearly. Before we go to bed, we use a lot of energy, and then when we come home, we use a lot of energy as well. And during the course of the day, not so much. One thing we could figure out there is that we actually had a very high energy bill due to our old refrigerator. So this actually helped us sway our landlord to do something about the fridge. So it actually had utility for us to do something like that. So chopping up dimension in time really deriving different dimensions, from your time dimension is really helpful. Similar thing we did here. Just to give you a little bit of context, this takes data from an app that runs on your phone that tracks your activities. So this is from yesterday. I came from home, went to work, cycled to work, biked to BART, walked here, and then went to get a coffee because it's an afternoon crash. And so it tracks all your data, all of your activities during the course of a day. It shows it on the map, so that's all well and good. But it does that. I've been using that for 1.5 years now. And what I was really interested in is what can I see over the course of all that period? So not looking at one day, but looking at 1.5 years. Yep. Well, this link has expired. Let me just open it up real quick. And that project is really dear to me because it really, to me, tells a lot about. There you go. About sort of my life, right? So if we talk about time series, that's exactly what this is. This shows, what I did with walking, running, and cycling. Not as important, which is why we tucked it in the top left corner. What's really interesting to me is how does it pan out on the map at first. And so this shows sort of my life over the course of 1.5 years, right? Being at home and biking to work. That's clearly what I do the most. And so, I've been to the high school a couple times. You see that a little bit over here for random events. But mostly, this is what I do in the city, day in, day out, mostly, obviously, biking to work, between home and work. I can click on home. I can see that, yes, I go a lot to Halftone. That was my previous company, and to Splunk is my current company. So you sort of get this relationship of places. But where time comes in really interestingly is here, right? So we assign a lot of context to time. What would be interesting to me is to see how is my day-to-day life different from my nightlife. Turns out very different. Also turns out I have a baby. I don't actually spend as much time out anymore. All of you are parents can probably attest to that. If I did this 2 years ago, that might have looked different. So context is really, really important. And so what we did here is use the exact same thing as you've seen with the energy project. We just use different dimensions of time to not here visualize data, but to filter it. So as an interactive method to filter my data. I can likewise say, on the weekends, on weekdays, I do very different things. Weekends more in Golden Gate Park, and so on and so forth. One random thing that we did not expect that sort of fell out of this project is also a fly tracker, apparently, where it shows you all the places I've been, not so many. But it's sort of an interesting journal of your life. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead. So again, this is used to we use time to derive different dimensions, hours of day, but then also contextual and very semantic dimensions like weekday and weekend, 9 to 5, and nightlife that we define completely arbitrary. The last method I want to talk about is small multiples, and I was about to show a video of Hans Rosling, one of my heroes. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a TED Talk. He's this very charismatic Swedish professor who started the foundation around public health data, and he tells his whole story about a chart that animates everything, talks it and comments it like a sportscast. It's amazing. You need to watch that. But we took this, and that was for a project for a public climate institute in San Francisco, where we did a lot of data exploration. And we took the same notion of sort of a two-dimensional chart, And we started to look at different metrics. One, they wanted to show the correlation between, as countries become richer and GDP grows, what's the impact on energy consumption in terms of fossil fuels versus renewables, right? And so what we did here, again, that was just a data exploration project to see what was going on. But what we did here is use time as on one chart, but use every year as a different facet on my scatter plot. So I see 1970 in blue, and I can sort of track the trail of the energy consumption versus GDP in that country, Sweden, and then I can go further and compare different countries against each other. And so this is just European countries, but if you saw India and China, for example, most countries here sort of go up in the left-hand corner as GDP rises. There are a lot of initiatives to go towards renewables in India and China because growth is so fast that hasn't happened so much yet. But this is a great way of showing a metric over time in small multiples across different countries. And the last project, do I have enough time still, roughly? Okay. Last project I want to show is was sort of a fun project that I've done. It's the same concept of small multiples, but here, let me see if I can go into the interactive. There you go. Here it shows, there you go. It shows the growth and the territorial expansion of the United States from the Declaration of Independence to the present. So each one of those little small multiples is one snapshot in time. And how this is different from time charts and line charts is that the intervals are not equally spaced. So there's a map for any important event that happened in history. But you see it's 1798, 1789, clearly a lot of things happen in the beginning. And then that evolves over time, and I can sort of flick through, and it almost becomes an animation of the territorial growth of the US. And if I'm interested in what happened in that particular year or that particular moment in time, I could go and look at it in more details and sort of flick through it piece by piece by piece. This was I put this online, and it turns out a lot of schools are using it now in like middle school to actually teach as one resource, clearly, to teach the territorial evolution of the United States. So that was really great to see. Yeah, that was my last project so far. So I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. There you go.
What language do you use primarily?
German and English. I'm originally from Switzerland.
Oh no, for your coding.
Oh, there you go. That's how removed I am from engineering now. It used to be D3, which for most custom-coded visualizations, there's almost no way around it. Very powerful.
So that video you showed about like the animated bubble charts and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have seen it. It was very impressive. But something that stood out, of course, was the animated graphs. And like one of the first things that you learn is that like simplicity is better. You reduce like the non-data ink compared to the data ink and stuff like that.
Yep.
Do you see with stuff like D3, with stuff like lots more opportunities to make fancy animated visualizations, do you see animations becoming more useful or more of a hindrance to communicating information?
Yeah, really good question. I think animation is, if used well, it can really help tracking changes in your data. Unfortunately, you really have to know when to use it. So it's overused a lot because D3 makes it so easy. So if you animate between two stages, instead of just flicking from A to B, you animate, say, a bar chart from top to bottom, and that's really helpful for your perception to understand what was going on. The whole sort of playing through things is really good to sell software if you want to. So it is used a lot in technology to just sell, for marketing, to sell. There's not a lot of insights you can gain from just playback if you don't have any means of stopping and drilling deeper. So it's good for an overview, for sort of awareness, but once you start actually exploring the data, this is where you really gain more insights.
Just a follow-up to that, I'm so glad to see that you didn't use time and animation. So it's really just a comment, right? I really appreciated your color coding of time, because you can compare the different points in time. And that's when you see if there's something notable, there's a difference between the two time periods. When you use animation for time, you completely miss that. So just a comment, kudos to you for not going down the animation path.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. For this example I showed, if you would to animate through time, by the end you would have forgotten where each of those countries started, right? So that's a good example of, if you introduce animation, you would actually make your visualization worse, even though it looks more dynamic, it looks more involved.
Last question in the back there.
Hi. Is there a method towards your selection of colors? Because as you know, I think in one of them you used colors to facet the difference in times, but the red clearly looks like a big problem.
Right. So yeah, very good question. We associate meaning to color, semantic meaning, just as much as anything else. I think if you introduce it right, and if you have a color scheme, that alleviates some of it, but absolutely. So we use the same color legend for another project that didn't show about temperatures, and clearly everyone recognizes red is hot, blue is cold. I think on this color scale, it's not as distracting, but if you had a green-red color scale, that's just sort of the one thing people say, oh, green is good, red is bad. And then there's color blindness issues that come with that as well. So yes, I guess bottom line is be careful what color you use, but if you introduce it right, you can alleviate some of that.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike.